Last summer, I was a foreign exchange student living in Beijing, China. I had traveled there alone, which meant I was on my own in a country where I didn't fully understand the language, the customs, or the city itself. I was 17 years old at the time. Most people told me I was brave. Some told me I was reckless. But China is known for being a very safe country, especially in major cities like Beijing. So I didn't think much of it. I took the subway every day. I learned the routes. I learned which stations were crowded and which ones were quiet. Eventually, it all became routine. That night, I was heading home after a long class excursion. It was late. The summer heat had drained every ounce of energy from me. My clothes were damp with sweat, and my legs ached from walking all day. I remember thinking that I had never wanted my bed more in my life. The subway platform was crowded with people waiting for the next train. I stood in line, scrolling through my phone, half paying attention to the world around me. That's when I noticed him. He was standing a few people away from me, staring, not glancing, not accidentally looking, staring directly at me. Being a foreigner in China, I was used to people watching me. Sometimes they whispered, sometimes they pointed, sometimes they smiled. It happened every day. So at first, I brushed it off. I told myself he was just curious, like everyone else. When the train arrived, I got on and found a seat near the middle of the car. The man entered the train too, but instead of sitting near me, he moved to the other side of the carriage. I noticed him again because I could still feel his eyes on me. Every time I looked up, he was watching. I was too tired to care. My head leaned back against the window. The train hummed beneath me. The lights flickered softly as we passed through tunnels. My eyes closed before I even realized I had fallen asleep. I don't know how long I was out for. I woke up to the sound of a station announcement echoing through the train. My eyes opened slowly, heavy and unfocused. That's when I realized the man was no longer across the train. He was sitting right next to me, so close that our arms were touching. For a second, my brain didn't register that anything was wrong. I was still half asleep. I just thought maybe the train had gotten crowded. Maybe he needed a seat. I shifted slightly and tried to fall back asleep. That's when I felt his hand. It pressed gently against the side of my head and pushed my head onto his shoulder. I froze. I remember thinking how strange it felt, how wrong it was. But I was so exhausted that my mind couldn't fully wake up. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was an accident, that maybe the train had jolted. I stayed still. My heart started beating faster, but my body wouldn't move. I felt trapped between sleep and fear. Again, I don't know how long passed. The next thing I remember is being pulled upward. Hands grabbed my arms. My body lurched forward and suddenly I was standing. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. The station lights were too bright. The sounds were too loud. I blinked several times trying to understand why I was moving. That's when I saw him. The same man from the train. He was dragging me through the subway station. My feet stumbled over the floor as he pulled me toward the exit gates. My bag swung against my side. People were walking past us in every direction, but no one stopped. It took a few seconds for my brain to fully wake up. When it did, fear hit me all at once. I yanked my arm away from him and asked him what he was doing. He turned to face me and smiled. It was wide, too wide, and completely wrong. He said, "You're my friend. I take you home." I stared at him. I'd never seen this man before in my life. He reached for me again, placing his hands on my arms as if we knew each other. As if this was normal. I stepped backward and told him to leave me alone. He grabbed my arms again and started guiding me toward the exit, repeating over and over that we were friends. That he knew me, that he was helping me. My chest felt tight. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The station suddenly felt too open and too empty at the same time. I broke free again and raised my voice. I told him I would call a security guard. The moment I said that, his smile disappeared. It dropped from his face like a mask. Without saying another word, he turned and walked away into the crowd. I stood there shaking, trying to breathe, trying to understand what had just happened. I got back on the train and sat as far away from everyone as possible. I kept my eyes wide open for the rest of the ride. Every time someone walked past me, my body tensed. I was terrified to fall asleep again. The rest of the ride felt endless. Every stop announcement made my stomach drop. Every time the doors opened, I expected to see him step back onto the train. I watched reflections in the windows instead of the people themselves, afraid that if I turned my head too quickly, I would lock eyes with him again. I kept replaying the moment when my head was pushed onto his shoulder. The casual way he did it, the confidence in his movements. It felt rehearsed, like he had done this before and knew exactly how to take advantage of someone who was tired and alone. I wondered how long he had been watching me before I noticed him on the platform. I wondered if he had chosen me the moment he saw I was foreign, young, and by myself. The thought made my skin crawl. When I finally reached my stop, I waited until the train doors were fully open and scanned the platform before standing up. My legs felt weak as I stepped onto the concrete. I stayed near other passengers as long as I could, pretending to check my phone while making sure no one was following me. The walk home felt different than usual. Every shadow looked like a person. Every footstep behind me made my heart jump. I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced that at any second I would see him smiling at me again, telling me we were friends. When I reached my apartment building, I didn't relax. I checked behind me before unlocking the door. I locked it immediately once I was inside and leaned against it, listening for footsteps in the hallway. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt hands on my arms again. I imagined waking up somewhere unfamiliar, not knowing how I got there. My mind kept drifting back to how easily I could have followed him if I had been just a little more tired or a little more confused. The next morning, the subway looked exactly the same. People stood in neat lines. Trains arrived on time. Nothing about the station hinted that something dangerous could happen there. But I knew better. I started standing instead of sitting. I kept my back against walls. I stopped using my phone on public transport altogether. I memorized the locations of security booths in every station. That experience changed how I moved through the city. Not because something terrible happened, but because it almost did. Even now, I still think about how calmly he smiled, how certain he seemed that I would go with him, and how quickly he disappeared once I threatened to get help. Sometimes the most frightening moments aren't loud or violent. Sometimes they happen quietly,